Hi, this is Clay Richardson, Chief Accelerator with Digital FastForward and your Innovation Leadership Coach. And today, what I want to talk to you about is a challenge that I see with a lot of innovation leaders. And this challenge focuses on how do you build the right cadence, momentum, and energy around driving innovation and sustaining innovation in your organization. I see this with different leaders, particularly when they have open source innovation internally or they're using a crowdsourced innovation platform. You see this overwhelming number of ideas coming from every different part of the company, but coming up from the grassroots and gaining momentum. But then what these leaders run into is a challenge around how do they get energy from the executives in order to move the ideas forward. And the friction there is really the executive team and leadership in companies have one idea of what the priorities need to be when it comes to driving innovation. And a lot of times the teams at the front lines or the grassroots, they have a different idea that most of the time is very directly connected to the customer. One particular leader that I work with, that I coach, was sharing this challenge with me recently, and it just made me think this would be something good to share with the audience. And it definitely, in the conversation that we were having, it was very frustrating for this leader because she could see all of these great ideas that were being generated, but then in terms of getting leadership to put energy behind it, there was a gap. I wanted to share this with you, this big idea around defining your innovation rhythm in order to sustain momentum and energy needed to deliver consistent outcomes for innovation and design thinking. And so you need an innovation rhythm. And so I'm going to walk you through the 4 steps of creating an innovation rhythm that helps you create the energy needed and build a momentum and really be able to combine grassroots ideation with executive leadership, energy, and support. That's really the 2 things you need to be consistent when it comes to driving innovation and getting to the outcomes in your organization. And so the 4 steps I'm going to walk you through are: first, engaging your leadership at the beginning of your innovation cycles. Okay, this is critical, and I'll walk through this. Then defining the big challenges that are most important that need to be addressed from the leadership's perspective. Obviously, you still want to stay focused on open source ideation so you can get the grassroots involved. And then the last part of the cycle or your innovation rhythm should focus on how do you execute on the ideas that have the energy from the grassroots and the energy from leadership. And so I'm going to walk you through each one of these and give you some tips and resources on how to build an innovation rhythm that works for you, your team, and your company. So the first step is to engage your leadership. And this is so important when it comes to innovation. If you start only from the grassroots, what ends up happening is you get the grassroots momentum, but ultimately the funding and the priorities have to be driven by leadership. And so at the very beginning of your innovation rhythm, you want to block off time. You'll have to decide what your timeline is in terms of how you execute your innovation rhythm, whether it's quarterly, whether it's semi-annually, whether it's annually. My recommendation is have an innovation rhythm that is quarterly. And so at the beginning of the quarter or before a quarter starts, you want to take time to engage your leadership, your executives, people who tend to be sponsors or budget holders, and say, help me understand what the big problems are in the organization that you need to solve. Essentially, you can ask this question: what's keeping you up at night? But you want to be able to start harvesting from the leadership their top 3 or 4 problems that they feel need to be addressed in the quarter or in upcoming quarters, right? And so engaging your leadership, getting those problems down at the beginning, and you can do this through facilitated problem ideation sessions, and we use how might we sessions to work with the leaders to be able to say, help us understand what are the big problems in the organization. And this can be as little as an hour working with a group of executives, or you can spread it out where you bring in different executives from different parts of the company. But the key is you want to be able to work with executives. For each executive, have them identify what are their top 3 problems that they feel are pressing and need to be solved within the next 2 or 3 quarters, right? Because you're really building this up where in the quarter, you get ideas or get the problem statements. By the end of the quarter, you have some ideas that are executable, you've built out prototypes, and you can say to the executives, hey, here's some solutions around some of the challenges or problems, right? So that first step is engage your leadership to have them lay out what are the big problems. The second piece or second step is defining those big challenges. So the leadership has already defined or said, hey, here's the problems that we have. What you need to do then is take those problems and work with your team, your innovation team or other stakeholders to begin to frame the problems or challenges as how might we statements. And so here, using design thinking, you're able to frame these problems as how might we's, making sure they're customer centered, making sure they're not too broad and not too narrow. And so you don't want to just have your problem statement as we want to be the best in the world, right? That's not really a good how might we. And so what you want to do is frame it, again, put the customer or the user that's impacted by the problem or the user or customer that will benefit from solving the problem, put them in the center of the how might we, okay? And then you want to make sure it's not so broad that you cannot solve any challenges, and you want to make sure it's narrow enough that you're able to come up with some ideas to move forward. Just to give you an idea, one team we worked with, they initially defined their how might we as we need to improve our order management process so that we won't get a lot of customer complaints. That's not a good way to frame a challenge, and that was their first attempt at framing the challenge. And we worked with this team to take that initial problem statement and translate it into something that was much more customer-centered and also focused on making it broad enough, but not too broad, but also narrow enough without it being too narrow. And so the ultimate how might we that we landed on working with the team was how might we increase customers' trust that we will deliver the right product at the right time for the right price, right? And so that's the key, is it became more customer-centered as opposed to internally company-centered. So that's really important one. Then the next step is to focus on open source ideation. So once you have the challenges and you've drilled down to a group of challenges that the executives feel pretty good about, but that you've also refined, then you can begin open source ideation. And what that really means is putting these challenges out to different teams to start brainstorming and getting ideas around them. So people submitting like, hey, here's how I think it would be good to address this challenge, and putting it out there and being open to getting hundreds of ideas or responses from the organization on the challenge. And so there's different platforms out there that allow you to post your challenge and then get feedback on the ideas, or allowing teams to submit their ideas. Some teams use something simple as Excel spreadsheets. Some teams use tools like Mural or Miro, and even others use tools like IdeaScale. And so at this point, you're ready to open it up, let people start ideating, and you're going to keep it open for a period of time. Depending on the rhythm or the cadence that you set up, you might say, let's keep it open for a couple weeks, or you may decide to keep it open for a month. And it really depends on your cadence. If you're doing a quarterly innovation rhythm, you may want to keep it open for a couple weeks just to keep the momentum going. And then the last piece, this is so important. A lot of teams skip this step when they get the ideas. They might prioritize ideas, but they don't take the top 2 or 3 ideas and then run a sprint. And so this is a design sprint. You might hear it called, referred to as an innovation sprint, design sprint. But the key here is what you want to do is, after you've prioritized, you've looked at all the ideas that came out of open source ideation, rank those ideas and pick the top 2 or 3. And from there, you want to have different teams work to run a design sprint. And these tend to be a 2 to 3 day design thinking session that's focused on taking the idea, starting to dig deeper into it, doing extremes, user extremes. And so again, we'll give you some material on how to run design sprints. But the key is you want to be able to have different teams run quick sprints where they can ideate even further, but at the end of those sprints, build out very simple, low fidelity prototypes to validate the ideas, okay? And so doing that sprint at the end gives you a way to come back to your leadership and say, hey, here's an idea or a solution to the problem that you identified, or multiple solutions, which is really great. Leaders usually love that. If you come back with 3 or 4 recommendations around an idea or solutions around an idea. And so look, those are the 4 steps that you want to use to build out your innovation rhythm. And I recommend everyone out there, if you don't already have a cadence of how you drive innovation, definitely use this as a framework. If you already have a cadence, I recommend using this to accelerate how you get to consistent outcomes. And so what we also are going to share with you is an innovation rhythm worksheet. And so this worksheet walks you through creating your innovation rhythm. And so it gives you the tips. There's some resources in there that'll be useful for you in terms of being able to build and work through this. And what I want you to believe is that it is possible to execute a strategy around innovation that combines top-down, and grassroots approaches. And this, I want you to believe that this approach allows you to create the energy that's needed to sustain innovation and get to consistent outcomes. More importantly, I want you to have confidence that you can control this consistency and pace of innovation that you need to deliver in your organization. And that's something I see a lot with innovation leaders, is they feel like innovation is hit or miss, right? Like sometimes we move fast, we get a good result. Sometimes we move slow, we miss the opportunity. What I want you to use this innovation rhythm framework to help build your confidence that you can control the consistency and pace of innovation in your organization. And then the last piece, the action I want you to take, is to download our innovation rhythm worksheet and use this worksheet as a foundation. The goal here isn't for you to just blindly go and answer the questions, but to use the questions as prompts for you to think about, what is the cadence that makes sense in your organization? What are the steps that are going to work in terms of building momentum for you, okay? And so definitely we're going to include this as a link, as a resource. Go download it, fill it out, And if you have questions, reach out to us. We are here to help. We actually offer complimentary one-on-one coaching sessions. So if you're interested in getting feedback, you're building this out, schedule time with us. We'll also provide a link on scheduling your complimentary innovation strategy coaching session. We'll provide that. And so this is Clay Richardson, Chief Accelerator with Digital FastForward and your innovation leadership coach. And just want to let you know, again, we're here to support you. We have our innovation leadership coaching program. The Innovation Accelerator is what we call it. We have a new cohort spinning up for the summer, so definitely register for that or apply. And that also includes a complimentary coaching session. So you can see how we can have an impact or how we help different companies and individuals. And we also have our 5-day innovation challenge. And I recommend checking this out. If you want to go deeper on some of the concepts that I laid out here, the 5-day innovation challenge has the different, how do you create a how might we? How do you think about low fidelity prototyping? And so I strongly recommend taking a look at that. That's a free resource, but it will take your innovation game to the next level. And so with that, signing off, and good luck innovating.